I believe, I have a feeling that that's what got you thinking about being in a helping mode as a hospice nurse. And now you have this wonderful book that I read, and it is a I recommend her highly. So I am not going to take much more time to say anything about you, because I would like for you to talk about yourself, your NDE, as brief as it is, and then please speak about your book and how you, as an hospice nurse, are able to help people. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tina. And I'm not muted, am I? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you so much. And thank each and every one of you for taking the time to come on tonight. Everybody has a busy life. So I know it's hard to take time to get away. So I'm grateful for people to be here. Um, And when I first found out that I had to talk for 45 minutes about my near death experience, I kind of panicked thinking, "Oh my God, it took me it's about 5 minutes to tell about my NDE." But but then so I looked at some of the previous presentations, and I stumbled upon Donna's. And I loved her presentation. She had not had a near death experience, but she had a very strong spiritual life that she talked about. So I thought, oh, well, I could talk about my spiritual life for days. So no problem. So you may have to cut me off. And once I get going, I was actually going to look for my phone to just see for time because I won't know. Well, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm just going to jump right in and dive right in. To my near drowning experience when I was 5. And I don't know if I don't know if you mentioned my name. My name is Cathy Truehart, and yes, the name has served me so well in my profession of having a true heart. But it all started 5 years ago. I lived in a very small town, New Vineyard, Maine. The population 500, and we had this swimming hole that we went to. It was actually a lake, Porter Lake, but it was really a blood-infested mud hole is what it was. I can't really believe that we actually swam there. When we'd get out, we'd pull bloodsuckers off from us. So it was a pretty disgusting place, but hey, it kept us cool, and that's where we went. So this one particular day, um, we were in the water, and there were 2 rocks in the water. One was flat and just kind of um, was right at the surface of the water, just kind of skimmed the surface. And the other rock was high, felt really high, but it probably wasn't that high. But the older children and my sister would dive off from the bigger rock. So I was doing my little thing in the flat rock with my little inner tube around my waist, and I just kind of skim off. And um, all the other kids jumped, dove. And so my mother made the mistake of saying, "Well, honey, you're doing such a good job. Pretty soon you're going to be diving just like your sister." Well, that's all I needed. With all this newfound confidence, I get my hands up in the air and I point myself down into the water with my inner tube securely around my waist, meaning that it was securely holding me under the water. And I was able to, I looked over and I could see my mother's legs, not too far off, so I could see the legs. And my first thought was, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm opening my eyes underwater. I never open my eyes underwater." And to this day, I still don't open my eyes underwater. Um, so I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. And all of a sudden, I started looking around and I could see the bottom of the lake looked so, um, it was like a nice sandy bottom. And all of a sudden, the the water was no longer murky and muddy. It just looked beautiful and clear, almost turquoise, like a tropical island, which had never been to and probably never even seen pictures of. But it was this beautiful beach, and I saw tropical fish. colorful, beautiful fish. And in reality, I'm not even sure if any fish could live in that lake, but they probably did. And so my next thought was, oh my God, I can't believe I can see. I'm not see, I believe that I can breathe. Everybody's always told me you can't breathe underwater, but by golly, I'm breathing. And so I just thought that was pretty amazing. And so the next thing I know, there's like this white light. There was no tunnel. Nobody said anything. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see any people or hear anybody, but it was just this light. And it was like it illuminated the entire lake. And I didn't have an out-of-body experience. I was just felt part of the lake. I didn't feel like I was in my body, but I didn't feel like I was out of it either. I just was like one with this lake and with this white light. And it was just, the only word that I can describe it in my vocabulary now is like nirvana, and just unconditional love and just peace and calm. And then the next thing I know, my mother turns around. She was counting heads, and she turns around and she sees my legs flailing frantically, splashing and flailing. So, of course, she runs over, pulls me up, and I did not have to be resuscitated. But that particular year, there had been a record number of drownings. And I just remember I just felt so grateful that I, number one, was spared, that I didn't die. And number two, that I had this incredible experience. It's always been, since it happened, it's always been my favorite life experience, my most treasured. And, from that time, I just always felt like I had a purpose-driven life. And I think there's almost even like a bit of a sense of responsibility. I was spared and I was given this vision. That must mean I've got something really important that I have to do with this life. So, there's that part of me, I think, that's always saying, okay, there's got to be more. I've got to do more. So, which has been the seeker in me. I definitely have considered myself a seeker my entire life. The seeker of truth, seeker of light, and just have always known that I was to be of service. I always felt it from the time I was little. I would always be the one that would reach out and be kind to somebody when everybody else was bullying them. I'd be the one that would always take care of people. And it was interesting because as I grew up, I realized anytime I had to give any kind of a talk for school, like a public speaking or anything, I would always choose a topic related to death and dying. I remember one of them was the art of dying. And I somehow got a hold of a reference that stated that that drowning was one of the most beautiful ways to die. I wish I had written it down. I wish I knew where he got it, because I've never heard of it since. And I've spoken with other people since that have had near drowning experiences that did not have pleasant ones. So I'm not really sure what that's about. I don't know if they just didn't get close enough to dying. I don't know what that's about. But as Tina made reference to, certainly the minute I ever heard the word hospice and found out what it meant, which was in the late 70s, I just knew that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 40 years. And I can say that what has helped me the most in hospice and with the near-death experience is I didn't tell everybody about it. I would only tell my story when I felt guided to. And generally, when I would share the story, it would be with someone who was struggling at the end of life. And hospice, of course, the main goal in hospice is to have a peaceful death, but sometimes that's just not in the cards for them, which is unfortunate. Usually we can get people pretty comfortable, but some people, it's just their karma, and can be, for whatever reason. Usually, the main reason is usually if somebody has a fear of dying, that usually is a harder death, and more drawn out. But when I would tell people, when we would see these people struggling at the end of life during the last hours, when I would share with the family and or the patients, depending on if they were conscious or not, generally they would not be conscious when they would have that kind of struggling. And I just would share my story, and feeling that in my heart of hearts, I really felt that they were already in the beautiful place like I was, even though outwardly they look like they're struggling like I was, my legs flailing, but inwardly there was never one moment of panic, never one moment of fear, never one moment that there was anything wrong. It was all just this beautiful experience. So that really helped me a lot in my career, to share that. So, the other thing that has helped me is when I was I was working as a hospice nurse at Bay State, and I was part of a near-death research program. So there was a chaplain who had started this program, and it was fabulous. We met at Bay State, and we had this huge, big table, and I think there was like 10 or 15 of us. And I learned there was like 5 things that I got from that particular experience. The first one being how we remember it like it happened yesterday, in great detail, even though, like myself, I don't always remember what happened yesterday, but boy, I can remember that experience, and I treasure it, and I can remember and I can even put myself right in it. When I talk about it, I'm like right back there. It's a fabulous thing to have. So we're not afraid of death. So I'm sure all of you feel the same way. No fear of death. People can talk to us easily about death and dying. And the one thing that I was surprised about was that that we are sensitive to loud noises, hypersensitive to loud noises. So I'll be interested when we do question and answer to see how many of you who have had a near-death experience are hypersensitive to loud noises. My husband's a contractor, so he's like a bull in a china closet. So whenever he's in the kitchen, I'm like jumping out of my skin, but it helps me. It has helped me to not be so upset with them now that I know that it's because of my near-death experience. So it'll be interesting to see if other people have that one too. And then the most important thing that I got from that group was learning to recognize orbs in a picture. And I'm a Cathy Kodak. I take pictures like it's my job. And I didn't know about orbs, that spirits show up as orbs. So I don't know how long after this had to be like 20 at least 20 years ago that I was in this research project. And so it was at least probably a year or so afterwards. I don't know for sure how long afterwards, but I was having a fundraiser for hospice, and it was called what was it called? Of life, the gift of life. And so one of the rooms, I decorated every room in my house, and I got like hundreds of people would come. It was pretty incredible, and I can't believe I used to be able to do it. But the room that I had a hospice room. And so this one particular patient that I had, which was really the inspiration for my book. It was a young girl. I'd never had. It was the only time I ever took care of a little girl, and she she had died like about 4 months before I had the fundraiser, and so I asked her parents. I invited her parents to come. We had become very close after me taking care of this little girl for 9 months, and so I invited them to the place, to the fundraiser. They had lent me a huge picture of her. It was like huge, and I put it on my mantle. And I hadn't realized this, but on the outside, on the window outside of the room, the hospice room, it was Christmas, so we had a huge star, lit up star, and I did not realize it until her parents came. And I knew that I somehow knew they were coming, so I went outside and I greeted them outside, and we talked, and we probably cried a little bit because I hadn't seen them probably since she had died. And so, we talked and we just had a private moment together. And then as we were walking up the walkway to my house, there in the middle of the star is this little girl who I called Lena in my book. And there she is, right in the middle of the star. And the three of us are like, oh my God, look at, there she is. There she is. And it was just such an incredible moment. I don't know if you can see these pictures, but I wanted you to see this because I wanted you to see so this is, oh, can you see? I still look little. Am I supposed to look little? So this was the picture of her when she was 2.5. She had a brain tumor when she was 2.5. And by the time I met her, she'd had like 9 surgeries, and she'd had quite an incredible life. But anyway, so here, I don't know how you'll be able to see. That's the one that, so this was, can you see her in the center? I don't think you can see it really good. That one, I think you can see the best of her in the center. And then this is the one with the orb. Can you see the orb? It looks like a shield. I just thought that was fascinating because usually the orbs are in a circle. So to see that in a shield, to me, was just, it just blew me away and just meant so much to me, just knowing that she was there, and it meant a lot to us. So that was just a wonderful thing. So yeah, I thought that what I would do. Oh, so I was wondering, if I had forgotten some of the main characteristics, or the most average characteristics of people who have had near-death experiences. So I tried to look it up, and I came across an article, and pretty much everything on this list with the article talked about, seeker of knowledge, felt closer to God, which I always did, an appreciation toward all life and nature. That was my favorite one because that's always been my way to nurture my soul, is more by nature and the earth. So I was happy to hear that. A life of service, certainly that was mine. A feeling of unconditional love and service toward others. Feeling more spiritual than religious. I've said that for years. Open to reincarnation. First book I ever read was The Reincarnation of Peter Proud. And the desire for a universal religion embracing all of humanity. That's been in my heart for many, many years. So it was just kind of fun to hear some of the things that we all have in common. So I'll be anxious to hear how many of those that everybody else experiences as well. So yeah, so I thought maybe I would just, like Donna, I thought I would talk a little bit about the history of my spiritual life. Um, and so I started when I was young. My parents did not go to church, but they insisted that my sister and I go to church. So what I would do is take the church money, and spend it on candy, and then go on I'd go to the fire escape at our school and sit there and eat my candy until it was time I knew church was out, and then I'd go home. I felt that was fair, seeing how my parents, didn't go. So I didn't think I should have to go. I don't think they ever caught on. I don't think they ever knew that. Then when we were in high school, my sister and I, we found a rector for the Episcopal Church. He was this young, hip guy. He was actually a neighbor. My sister used to babysit for him. And he also had a record store in town. So he was safe. So we would go to the Episcopal Church, until I just realized, we would just have these totally inappropriate, uncontrollable fits of laughter at the worst times, during prayer So needless to say, I was really happy when I graduated high school and I did not have to go to church anymore. So I found that, I even went through a stage where I kind of felt agnostic, maybe, and mainly because I felt that traditional religion did not see my love for the earth and for nature as it wasn't accepted. It was considered more pagan, which I kind of really was pagan, I guess. But I was very spiritual and felt very close to my divine source. I just had a hard time calling my divine source God. And so, I just really did a lot of Native American things. I worked with Native American traditions and moon ceremonies, and just did more earth things. And certainly when I started doing, I was into crystals, Exhibit A, but very much into crystals and healing stuff. I did Reiki and reflexology. And it really wasn't until a very unusual experience. It was one of the most incredible spiritual experiences of my life that turned me to more organized religion. My girlfriend and I were traveling across the country, and so we got a pickup truck, put curtains on the back, and my girlfriend had some peyote that which is an hallucinogenic that had been saving for a sacred experience. So we thought, if we happen to come across some Native Americans, well, we'll just have a nice little, we'll turn them on. We'll have a nice sacred experience together. And then we decided, well, we might need something to stay awake. And the only person that would sell us anything would only sell us 100 pills of, like they were called Crossroads. It was kind of like an amphetamine to keep you awake we thought we might need them for driving. So instead of just picking out a few, we just put the whole bag in. Well, we went back and forth in Canada and in the United States, and we ended up coming through Buffalo, New York, and we were arrested and put in jail. And the whole experience was like something out of a movie. They could make a movie out of it. It was just so incredible. It was just like the most amazing experience, other than my near-death experience. It's right up there with it. And what I got out of that is that there was one woman in the convent. Oh, so one of the police women that had taken us to jail could see that we were not criminals in any way. And she was getting ready to join a convent. So she somehow we went before the judge, and she got special permission to take us into her custody. So we ended up in a convent. It was called the Sisters of Mercy. And it was, again, such a magical experience. We go there. They one of the women, one of the nuns, was working on her doctorate. And so I was explaining to her that, I really had a hard time with regular organized religion, that I found meditation much more, that resonated more for me than prayer. And she said, "Oh, well, absolutely." She said, "Yes, that's fine." She said, when you pray, you talk to God, and when you meditate, you listen to God." And I was just like, for the first, I mean, this was like 50 years ago, right? So I was just like, wow, yes, thank you. Finally, somebody in organized religion I can relate, and she was very Catholic, but it was definitely a very liberal. I think it was like a trial convent, because they were incredibly liberal. As in, Mother Superior used to wear like hot pants and drink shots of Jack Daniels. So yeah, I could totally relate to these people. They were so much fun. And we actually, even at one point, the other piece that really turned me around was that we had communion together in the living room. We passed around a big loaf of bread and then a glass of wine. And there were two priests there with us, all the nuns, us two criminal nurses, and and we shared communion together. And then also after that, I taught them how to do shots of tequila. I had them all lined up. They all had their little hand with their lemon and salt on it, and a shot of tequila. And it's like, okay, here, you're all ready. They're all lined up, and they did a shot of tequila. So it was an incredible experience for them and for us. And so certainly after that, I just really wanted to have more of an experience with organized religion. So from there, I just really sought out a church, and that was a journey in itself as well. But I was just so grateful for that experience. I mean, we could have lost our nursing licenses, but we didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. You got to have this one. I'll just quickly get this one in. The best part of it was when we, the first night that we got there, they took us into the chapel. They had a little chapel in the convent, and one of them pulls out a guitar, starts playing her guitar while we're watching the news, and the headline read, "2 nurses bagged at the border." And here we are in handcuffs and on the news, and these nuns are singing to us, "It's a long road to freedom, working on a chain gang." I mean, they were priceless. They were just priceless. The whole experience, again, could be a movie. But it was like the most spiritual it was like the most spiritual experience that really turned me around and helped me to find a more organized religion. That, and like Donna talked about, when she was finding her way through her spiritual gifts, that that fear would come up, that there are entities that will come in that are not wanted. And I started experiencing some of that, and just felt the need to have the protection. I needed Christ to protect me. And so between that and wanting some sort of a foundation for my girls, my two daughters, I wanted to be part of a church. So I joined the St. Philip's Episcopal Church and spent 15 years as a lay Eucharistic minister there, and still did my meditation, and still, did my ceremonies, my Native American ceremonies, but was able to just find a real connection with Christ, and it really helped my spiritual life to balance it more. So yeah, let's see, where do I want it to go from there? Like Donna had said that she didn't realize that she had the ability to do kind of mediumship type stuff or to do readings. And it's funny because I've been going to mediums my entire life since I can remember. I've had my tarot cards read. I even went to a tea leaf reader in Boston when I was in my teens. And every single one I've ever been to has always said, "Oh, honey, you can do this. Oh, you should be doing this. I should be coming to you." And I've taken classes on how to be more intuitive. I've done everything I know how to do, and still it just doesn't. I feel like, nope, I don't have it. And I think it's because I have this belief. And Donna also said you're a safe group, so I'll share this belief with you. I have this belief that I was burnt at the stake as a witch in a past life, to the point that I used to even get sensations in my legs. For years, I would get sensations in my legs. And so my story has always been that I have the gift. I guess supposedly we all have it. Some of us are just better at it than others or have exercised it more. But I feel that I strongly have that gift, but because I was persecuted in past lives for it, that this life I haven't felt safe pursuing it. So, and then I was at I did a conference, a virtual conference over the weekend that was phenomenal, just phenomenal, about love in action with Marianne Williamson and Michael Beckwith and Deepak Chopra. And being reminded, I mean, this has been my spiritual life for many years, that the importance of our words, our thoughts, our beliefs, the stories that we tell, how powerful they are. I know that, but just to be reminded of that helped me to realize that, I've told this story to myself over and over that I can't do this in this lifetime. When in fact, as I was just kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about here tonight, I started realizing, wait a minute. Remember the time that you had the vision of this and that? It's like I've always thought that I wasn't clairvoyant, but there's been times that I've seen things. For example, one time I was struggling with depression, and my husband and I, we loved going to Sedona. We've always loved Sedona. Fortunately, he loves it too. And we had gone there. It was shortly after the harmonic convergence in 1987. And there was a big medicine wheel that many people had gathered for the convergence. And so my husband and our guide they were off doing something while I meditated in the center of this medicine wheel. And I got this symbol came to me. It was an X and a cross. And I mean, it would not go away. And it kept staying with me. And I thought, I don't know what this is. And I spent years going places. I would go to any minister, any person of the cloth to try to find out what is this symbol. And finally, I was at a convention. It's called Angelic Walk-ins. That's quite a trip too. But they had a little book section and, gifts. And all of a sudden up on the wall, I look up. I have it right here. I look up and here's the symbol. This is the symbol that I had searched for everywhere. What does this mean? And so I see this book. The title is It Is All Right by Isabel Hickey. And my whole body I had a whole visceral response. And I just went, I want that book. Give me that book. Yes, I want to buy that book. And I'll tell you, this book has been like a Bible to me. And I ended up getting 10 copies of it and giving it to everybody for Christmas, and just said, if you ever want to know who I am, read this book and you'll know this is my truth. And I think there was one part in it about fairies that I didn't love, but everything else was just totally spoke to me. It's where I got my protection prayer that does help with energy work. But that was just there was that, and another time when I had a bronchitis for 5 months. I couldn't lay down. I had to sleep on the couch, totally upright, because I would just start choking and coughing. And at one point, I actually was choking. I couldn't breathe. I could have had a second near-death experience then, but I got myself outside and was able to start getting something in. But I started, every time I'd close my eyes, I would see plants everywhere. Plants, plants, plants. I would dream about plants. I mean, this went on for a long, like at least a couple months, just plants, plants. So finally I took the hint and went and studied with an herbalist, and started making my own tinctures and did echinacea and just St. John's wort. So I just had finally healed myself from this ridiculous bronchitis. And who knows, maybe it was just a message to go learn how to do make the tinctures. But so I started to realize, okay, so maybe it doesn't mean you're not clairvoyant. It's just, I guess I'm the type that I want to be able to, I want it to be very clear. I want to hear God say, okay, Cathy, this is what you need to do, and this is what will happen. So it's kind of like learning. My whole life I've spent kind of learning how to trust that I can listen to my guides, and that the universe will speak to me. And I think how are we on time? So I should probably be wrapping up pretty soon, huh?
Cathy. Hi, Cathy.
I just haven't saw that it's almost 8 o'clock. So
no, Cathy, I have a question for you. I think, if my memory serves me right, you had Reiki training, right?
Yep.
Okay, so please tell us how that helped in dealing with your hospice work.
Oh, well, in hospice work, it's amazing, because when somebody's dying, everybody wants something to do. It's like, what can I, there's not, you want to do something, but there's so little that you can do. So for me to do Reiki, and that's the one thing, the average people in this world, they're very resistant, or they're judgmental. Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't think that's appropriate. Well, that's weird stuff. But in hospice, people are like, they got nothing to lose. They're so open. They want anything and everything, and they're just so grateful for it, and they're so receptive, and it's just so wonderful. I mean, I would do Reiki. I had this one woman one time, I did Reiki on her. She was like writhing in pain. And I just went up to her. I put my hands on. I said, "Oh, honey, I'm just going to do a little bit of Reiki here." Within 5 minutes, she goes, my pain's gone. I mean, that was the exception, not the rule. But sometimes when I would do the Reiki, it not only would it calm the patients, it would calm the whole family. Everybody in the room would just kind of be like, And plus I do reflexology, which I love reflexology. So I always do like a combination of Reiki and reflexology, which is just such a beautiful marriage. And but yeah, I actually became oftentimes people, especially the biggest one with Reiki is the bowels. Oh my goodness. I learned on the feet where where the colon was. And that's how I got started with reflexology, is for the bowels. So I became the foot lady, if anyone was constipated, and they all were, because almost all of them were on narcotics for pain. So, I mean, I was kept so busy. I was the holistic nurse. I have a certificate in holistic nursing as well. So I would be the one. I was very busy. I mean, I'd do an admission and I'd end up doing Reiki and reflexology on them before the admission was over. So it was, I'd be up till midnight putting things in the computer because I'd been doing that while I was admitting them. So it was invaluable. Reiki and reflexology was invaluable in hospice. It's been phenomenal. So I'm going to wrap up my little thing here, nice and neat, and then I'll open up for questions. So the book that I wrote, The Miracle of Hospice, I was guided to write this. I had one day that was just, I just couldn't believe, it went from being with my little Lena and having an epiphany on the porch with her father, to cleaning up kitty litter for one of my elderly patients, to breaking up a fist fight on a family meeting, to doing a pronouncement and coming out of the closet and saging him after he died. It was just like when the day ended, I just went, oh my God, I could write a book about this day. So the title was actually going to be One Day, but it ended up being The Miracle of Hospice. And but then when it came out, I was kind of I was embarrassed, and I felt like naked. I was training volunteers at the time, and it was a bereavement counselor, and I just felt naked with this book because I had shared all this personal stuff, and it felt like too much personal stuff. I just had too much fun, like 2 nurses bagged at the border. That's in there. It stayed in there too. But I had all kinds of other personal stuff. And even though, when I had my proofreaders, I kept saying, don't you think there's too much personal stuff? And they said, oh, no, you got to keep that in. Oh, it makes it colorful. It's great. No, don't touch it. So I left it in. And then when it was published, it kind of embarrassed me that there was so much personal stuff and that it didn't pertain to hospice like it should. So I wasn't happy with it. So I just really kind of let it sit there for the last 10 years. And it wasn't until I was working to write another book, looking to do another book, that has always felt like my life purpose is to write this book about bipolar disorder, because I watched my father suffer so with it, and I had experience with it too. And so the book, My Greatest Teacher, Embracing Bipolar Disorder. So I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to write this book. I tried writing it and I got depressed, so I stopped. But then I started reading Tina's book. We had a mutual friend and she lent me the book. She gave me the book. And the part in it that said, just talk to your guardian angel. And I'm like, oh, I don't, I have never really been good at that, but I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it. She says to do it, so I'm just going to do it. So I just blurted out, okay, guardian angel, I need a sign. You need to give me a sign if I'm supposed to write this book. Well, within seconds, I got a phone call from Go-To Publishing what's the word I'm looking for? To rewrite, the word's not coming, but anyway, to republish my book. And normally I get those calls all the time, but I always ignore them and thinking that, they just want the money, which is such a shame to think of our fellow brothers and sisters as wanting to scam us, but unfortunately it is true. So I just disregard the call, but because it came within seconds of me asking for a sign, I let the guy talk. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to meditate. And I'm going to ask the angel some more, or my guardian angel. I'm going to ask some more. And so I meditated on it and just thought, maybe if I took out all that part that I thought was inappropriate, the personal stuff that didn't feel like it fit, and maybe added about how I had to take care of how I took care of my father for 5 years, took care of my mother for 5 years, and what that was like. The difference, it's one thing to support caregivers, and it's a whole different ball game to be a caregiver yourself. So I had a lot to say about that, and I really wanted to add that to the new book. So I did. I republished it, and it really has just come out. And my website is in here. The website is very new. So if there's, and I'm worried, I'm a little worried that I want it to be so I can contact people through it, but I'm afraid when I try to go through it, I'm not sure that people can as well, or maybe I'm worried that I won't receive it like I need to. So I would like to suggest that if anyone wants to email me after this session, the best way to email me is at cathytruehart@yahoo.com. I'll for sure get it that way. And hopefully I'll get it from my website, because I really want that to work, because I'm looking forward to being able to have this on it. And I will be doing a radio interview with Kate Delaney probably next month. So that will be on it too. So I'm going to just give you guys a break from me and open it up for questions.
Go ahead, Laurie.
Hi, Cathy. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, the misadventures and all. Very interesting. My question is, when you were having your NDE when you were young and you were under the water, could you also see above the water? Like, did you see your mother coming to get you?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. So you were seeing this vision of tropical fish and palm trees. Okay.
I was I didn't see the palm tree. The palm trees, there were no palm trees, but It just felt like tropical in that it felt like the water was almost turquoise and clear and sandy beach. But no.
But it was really a muddy pond. So
yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. Do you know how long you might have been under the water for? Did anybody say?
Oh, it's funny that you asked. My mother had a fit when I first wrote the book, and she said, "Oh, you make it sound like I wasn't paying attention. I sound like a terrible mother." So I had to rewrite it and say, how she was so, always counting ads, and because my thought was that she had a back turned to me, and it's like, she said, "I didn't have my back turned to you." She had to have. So I really don't know. I mean, I don't think it was really that long. For me, it felt like a long time, but I don't think it was really that long, because I think she really would have. It was pretty small, and she really was in her. She was very attentive.
You done, Laurie? Okay. So Matthew Davis and then Donna Gordon.
Hi, Cathy. It's actually Sharon here with the questions. First of all, how do you spell your last name, Hart? With H-A-R-T or H-E-A-R-T?
Thank you for asking. It's just H-A-R-T.
Okay. And secondly, Sisters of Mercy. Have you followed up with them over the years to find out how they exist today?
It's funny that you asked that, and I'm glad that you asked that, because, while I was preparing for this and remembering the story with them, I wish I could, and I think I'm going to try to, because I'm sure they would love to hear they'd love to hear the story again. And as it turned out, my father ended up coming from Maine to Buffalo, New York, which was a stretch for him, to bail us out of jail. Mary's bail was $10,000. Mine was only $300. He had to come down to bail us out. And it was the first time a man had ever stayed in a convent. So it was, we broke history, and he just had the experience of his lifetime. It was like here he is coming to get his daughter out of jail, and it turned into like a spiritual experience of a lifetime for him. And so he loved them so much that we had a little tiny cottage on a lake way up in Maine, and he invited them all, and they came. They all came. And, you know, he treated them all like queens, and it was great. But then after that, I lost contact. But, you know, I would love to have the sister that explained the difference between prayer and meditation. I would love for her to know how that affected my life.
And just one more question. Would you know how they came to be? Because I know one was a police officer turned. Do you know how that group came to be? Because it is so untraditional.
But it was so untraditional, so untraditional. And I don't know if I'm making this up, but I think they were like some sort of an experiment of trying. They didn't wear habits. They could, sometimes they would, but for the most part, they dressed in street clothes. Like I said, Mother Superior in her hot pants. It was amazing. It was amazing. You know, it just made me want to be a Catholic for the first time in my life. I felt like, oh, I could do this. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Cathy, I have a question. So we can go because it's not fair. It's two of us. But during your near-death experience, when you were underwater, did you feel like, or do you realize or not, if you've traveled anywhere during that time?
No.
When you were underwater?
Nope. I didn't travel anywhere that I remember. No, I felt like I was right there. But again, I didn't feel like I was in my body, but yet I didn't feel like I was outside of my body. I just kind of didn't realize that I even had a body at that point. I don't think. I feel like I was just part of the water or part of the light. I'm not sure which.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna?
Hi, Cathy. Thanks for mentioning my my episode that I had.
Well, I hope I spoke highly enough of you.
As a little surprise and a little blushing here. But I just wanted to say, you know, being a hospice, I always felt, you know, when I visited as clergy visiting people when they were in hostage was a absolutely sacred experience, and, you know, and a privilege to be with someone, yes, you know, towards the end of their being. But when you were when you're actually doing your work, have you noticed over the years any spiritual happenings while you were at someone's bedside, like see their soul leave their body, or orbs, like all of a sudden an orb appears and leaves? I know a lot of people who were at the bedside of their loved ones always talked about how their parents or their loved ones saw a deceased relative, you know, and couldn't, but the person was deceased. They were not in the room, but yet the person would say that they are in the room. Could you talk a little about those experiences as far as your work is concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. I could talk all day on that. In hospice, we kind of know that that's when people are getting close to dying. When they start getting visits from their ancestors, their relatives that are from the other side, that's when we know they're getting close. I used to ask people, so have you seen anybody? You had any visitors lately? You seen any relatives? Tell me what, you know. And if they said no, I thought, okay, they're not close yet. One of my favorite stories is we had this patient that he was kind of agnostic, and he was completely atheist. That's what it was. He wasn't I was kind of agnostic. Now he was atheist. And so my girlfriend, who went into nursing school at age 50 because of her experience with hospice when her father was dying, she became a hospice nurse from that experience, and because it was so sacred. And she's very, very spiritual and religious. And so the two of them, you know, had the great relationship. They would joke back and forth. You know, she'd say, oh, you wait, you're going to see your wife when you go. And he goes, oh, that's bullshit. Nah, that's not going to happen. Nah, it's just a black hole. Nah, get out of here. So he was like a gruff, but they would banter back and forth. Sure enough, she happened to be with him when he was dying, and he had his hands up, smiling and calling his wife's name. And that was like one of my favorite stories, because it was just, she felt so gifted to witness that. And we'd have a million stories like that. My girlfriend just wrote a book called Halos that she's got, and she's a good storyteller. And she's just got tons of stories about like that. And for me, I personally, like I've always said, being with someone who's dying is like the closest you get to spirit world, or the closest you get to God, or that I do. And I feel that it's just like, it just lifts the vibration. I mean, yeah, it can be, I can be crying hysterically, but it's still, it's that raw feeling, and just feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit and God. And when my father died, he was on hospice. He was in a nursing home. And by the time I got there, the minute I walked in the room, I just felt it. I didn't see it. I felt that his spirit had already left. So he still went on for another hour and a half or so with the breathing and stuff. And so just in case I was wrong, I still talked to him, because hearing is the last to go. So I always do that. I always talk to people after they've died. And so I still kept talking to my dad, and but it was like I had this sense that he was gone. The minute I walked in, it was just so distinct. Whereas with my mother, I took care of both of them, each for 5 years in my home. Then my mother, when she died, it was very sudden. She was in Florida, and I had come back here for a brief period of time, and then she fell and things happened. And so I got the call that she only had hours to live, and it was right at the height of the pandemic. So I, of course, got on a plane and said, I'll be there. I wanted to be with her when she died. So I was just, the whole time getting there, I was just in tears. I just had this feeling she wasn't going to be alive when I got there. Sure enough, she was alive, and I felt her spirit. I knew she hadn't left yet. And so I just like thanked her. Oh, thank you so much, Mom, for staying here, and waiting for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I spent the night, she was in a hospice. I spent the night with her, told my sister, that her breathing had improved, because they stopped giving her medication because she was calm. So they hadn't medicated her. I said, oh, don't, take your time getting here. It's not going to be, it's going to be a while. And I went to read a book, and I went, what am I reading a book for? My mother's dying, for gosh sakes, do some Reiki. So I just got this strong hit, do some Reiki on her. Within 5 minutes of the Reiki, actually, I just started the Reiki, and I usually call in people's ancestors and their guides. And so I started calling in my aunt. It was when I called in my aunt and uncle. I was calling in her parents, and I said, I hope you're planning a big party, and Aunt Mamie and Uncle Ralph are here. And as soon as I said, it was her sister, her beloved sister, as soon as I said those names, bam, her breathing totally changed. And I went, oh dear. It's like, I don't have time to call my sister and tell her that I was wrong, that she needs to get here immediately. So I just finished doing the Reiki, and she died within like 2 or 3 minutes. And that just felt so powerful to me, that the minute I called in my aunt and uncle, she went. And I had a sister-in-law who, she had her kids were 7 and 11, and she was in the hospital, and she said, oh, my mother and my aunt came to me last night. And I said, you get out of here. No, I am not ready to go. I have got my kids to raise. No, I'm not coming. And it was like, so, because most people think that it's the morphine, but it's like us in hospice, we know it is not the morphine. I mean, it's like probably, I have never even thought about what the statistic is, but at least 50% of people either see their relatives or have some sense or have these great, amazing stories. And the whole book, my book, is laced with all kinds of wonderful stories of different scenarios of different cases.
Thank you, Cathy. James first, and then Jack. Oh, your sound, James. Your sound is off. James, your sound is off.
We can't hear you, James. Your microphone is off.
Can't hear. Let's do sign language.
The microphone should appear on the bottom of your screen. If you move your mouse around the window where everyone's faces
There
are.
we go.
Okay, good.
Yay.
When I was 10 and a half, I had access to a large swimming pool, public swimming pool, and I practiced swimming underwater. And I got to where I could do 3 lengths of about a minute each. But when I went for the 4th length, I had a similar experience to what you described. I realized that I didn't really have to breathe anymore.
Yeah.
And this was very handy. That means I could swim as long as I wanted underwater. And I wasn't really aware of it, but I didn't have any awareness of body or an awareness of water or lack of those. So there I was, and it was delightful. And I think it's called the Rapture of the Deep, actually. But I decided that probably I should not prolong it because I could be making a mistake. So I did get out of the swimming pool. Nobody really noticed. I could have easily drowned. But it made me wonder, how common do you think that Rapture of the Deep experience that you and I had, how many people have come to you and said, oh, that happened to me?
Not many. And I've never heard that term, rapture of the deep. That's kind of intriguing. So have you, is that the only experience you've had with a near-death experience, or have you had any?
I have had other things.
Oh, you have had other, because I was going to ask you if you had the other characteristics that.
But I didn't have the classic, light or a tunnel or
Right.
loved
But
one.
did you have the sense of wanting to be of service, or the sense of purposeful life, or feeling of being close to God, or did you have any of the other kind of characteristics that are common with?
I think it's probably more analogous to an OBE.
To a what?
An out-of-body experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to tell you, I have a song for your experience of church.
What is it?
I won't sing it, but I'll recite. Don't send your kids to Sunday school. Get out of bed and take them. You wouldn't want to go by yourself. Don't let them feel forsaken.
Thank you. Too bad they're both on the other side, so they can't, they deserve that song. It's true. Thank you. I should have read it. I love it. Do we have any more questions?
Jack,
Okay.
your question?
Yes, Cathy, you had 40 years of experiences at the hospice, and you have been in the presence of many who have crossed over, with you being present, etc. Now, you you alluded that there were other events that happened. Were there any physical events that you might have attributed to the dying person, like lights dimming, going off, or birds coming to the window, or things that are generally attributed to communication with the afterlife?
Oh, yeah. I got a ton of those stories. I was a bereavement counselor for the last 5 years of my career. And so you can be sure. And you know what happened though? So we'd have the grief groups, and these, people would talk about their experiences of being visited by their loved ones. And we used to call them God winks. That's what they called them. Like I use the term God incidences from Maya Angelou of, the synchronicities that happen in life. But my grief group, there was one guy in the grief group, and he used to call them God winks whenever he would have an experience of his wife communicating with him. But what happened would be that, so there would be a few people, maybe even 50%, I don't know, but a lot that would tell their stories of how their loved one communicated with them. And then, so the ones that didn't get anything would just be so disappointed and feel like, well, what's wrong with me? How come my husband's not contacting me? So it kind of had a little bit of a double-edged sword, but so many stories. I mean, I had one guy, he talked about, and always about lights, electricity, like pennies are the main thing that people find. And mainly it's because, copper is a good conductor of energy. So, I mean, John Holland used to talk about, gosh, these spirits are kind of cheap. All they want to do is use pennies. Although I had a girlfriend, the one that wrote the book Halo, she, her ex-husband, when he died, he's to this day still leaves her dimes. She finds dimes everywhere. She's the only one I know of that gets dimes. But usually the pennies, like when I see a penny, it used to be always, I would assume it was my father, but now that my mother's there too, it's like, okay, which one of it is you? Well, which one is trying to talk to me? But certainly, lights, televisions going off and on. Like I said, this one guy, he literally was sitting at the table and he could not find his keys anywhere. There was not a thing on the table and he couldn't find his keys. So he's walking around the house asking his wife to help him get his keys. And he goes back to the table and the keys were right on the table. And he said, I promise you they were not there before. So some people literally viscerally find things that have been moved. And yeah.
Well, when my brother-in-law passed away, and we were going to the burial grounds I was in the back seat. My sister was in the front passenger seat, and her two granddaughters were next to me. And suddenly, one of the granddaughters said, "Oh, Grandma, there's a penny on your shoulder." He reached up, and there was a penny on her shoulder.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mike and I always used to have fun. We'd be walking, and whenever we would see a penny on the ground, if it was heads, it was for him. If it was tails, it was mine, or something like that. But anyway, it's interesting. I haven't heard many penny stories, but you indicate there are quite a few. I'm glad.
Oh, it's very, very, very common. That's the most common one.
Okay, well.
John Holland. Have you ever heard of John Holland? He's a wonderful medium. And I went to one of his conferences and he described how it works, that how he gets to communicate with people on the other side is that people on the other side vibrate at a higher vibration. So what he does is he lifts his vibration before he goes on to stage. He probably meditates. And the spirit world, they kind of lower their vibration so that the two shall meet. And talks about, I think it was him that talked about how the spirit world, they're kind of like 3 feet off the earth plane, but that how they're always just, they're here, you know, and how certain, oh, so I think I wanted to say something more about that with the energies meeting. Oh, just about how that's why, like, animals can tell when there's a spirit around. When your animals start freaking out, you can just kind of assume that somebody in spirit is there, because they vibrate at a higher vibration. Children vibrate at a higher vibration, so they have a tendency to see ancestors more than adults do. So it's really, to me, it's just a fascinating phenomenon. And I mean, you can't do hospice and not believe in the afterlife. You just can't. There's just been too many experiences that we've had.
But could you describe any electrical events that were observable by you and other people, not just you?
Oh, that I'd have to meditate on that one.
I mean, you know, for example, when my brother died and I was in the funeral home beside him, and of course my eyes were closed and I was crying for quite a while. Later, my wife said, you know, Jack, when you were up there with Nick, the lights in the room were flickering. And so here was an event where many saw this event, but of course, it generally doesn't register with them. They just think it's an unusual thing and like a dream, and they forget about it. So anyway, it's something where other people were part of the witness.
You know, I'm sure there has to have been. Nothing's popping in right now. This 70-year-old mind is not kind of registering anything right this minute. But if I come up with something, I'll email it to you.
Would you please? I'd appreciate it.
I would. Yeah, there probably is. It's just right now it's just not coming to me. But I'm trying to think, because I almost feel like there was something that was pretty amazing, but it's not coming to me right now.
Okay. Well, also, if you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate the penny stories as well. I have a collection of events that have taken place that are pretty amazing. When my sister died, there were 13 events witnessed by me, my her son, and grandson, my brother, anyway, 13 events, all about within a week or so. So,
wow, that's wonderful.
Thank you very much.
That's wonderful.
Actually, one event was where there were witnesses, and it was rather amazing. So, those kind of stories I really appreciate having.
So what was it? What was the one that was so amazing?
Well, I think I've told this before to my group, but
I'll hear it again.
my sister was in hospice and she was in a coma, and my grandson called me and my brother, and we decided to fly in that morning. And I arrived first, and they greeted me. It was about 12 o'clock, and they said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but Ellie has passed away." And so we decided to wait for my brother to arrive, and we were sitting at a round table, me, my nephew, and his son, and they were drinking coffee, and I had so much coffee I was having orange juice in one of these plastic containers. I had finished my orange juice and I had set it down, and we were talking, and suddenly the bottle started to move from right to left, and it went about 14, 15 inches. And
wow.
We're totally dumbfounded. And then my nephew's son picked up the bottle and put it back in front of me. And then after a few seconds, once again, it moved to the left.
Wow.
And so here is an event that is with witnesses,
Goodness. Yeah.
which validates it much more than just a single personal. But he had many experiences. Garage doors opening on 3
Oh,
different
yeah.
garage doors are very popular. I think there's the amount of electrical energy that's required to set them off seems to be within the realm of the afterlife, and so on. So anyway, any stories you could share with me, I would appreciate.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that one. That's a good one. I love it.
I had one other question since I'm on the phone. When you and your family saw the star, and in the star was the image of the young girl, this is a case where you had witnesses. I mean, it's a story that has much validation, and I really like that. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that in greater detail, I would appreciate it.
So share it in greater detail. Well,
Cathy, I don't remember, but do you have that in greater detail in your book?
no, I don't even know that I don't think this is even in my book.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think that I talked about this at all in my book. It's just, I was so close. I'll probably start crying because this was such an intense case for me, but just to me, it just seems so amazing that I didn't even see that she was in the center of the star. Let me see. Yeah, you can't, I don't think these pictures really even show it that well. Just that, and there's a part of me, I'm trying to remember when I was trying to remember back, I thought that there might have been a bench or something outside that we sat and talked for a little bit before they came in. I was so close to this couple. He was very, he didn't trust social workers. He thought they just were prying into his life. And they were both of Puerto Rican descent. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the culture or not, but he just wanted nothing to do with our social worker because all they're going to do is pry into his life. And Lena was, I try to change people's names, but oops. So, can I just go into detail about the case?
Okay.
Supposed to being in the star. So the case was just, and I go into quite a bit of detail about the case in the book. That's kind of the tearjerker part of the book. That's the most tearjerker because having a young child. But the father was just so devoted to this little girl, and she just was such a daddy's girl. She wouldn't let her mother do anything. It had to be always daddy, daddy, daddy. And so, here I'm thinking, oh, a little girl. Oh, it's going to be such a wonderful experience with a little girl. We're going to be so close. I'm going to love her so much. She's going to love me. No, she was a little terror. She would dismiss people if she didn't like them. She would just tell them to leave, that they could just leave. So I had to really win my way over with her. And it always, at first, if it was hard, it was like a hard case for me because it was so hard to reach her. And her mother had told her that only old people and sick people die. So that left me with, okay, so I'm going to go against what her mother's saying. So I didn't dare ever bring up anything about death and dying with her until the end when she asked if she would be able to have her hospital bed in heaven. And I said, honey, you're not going to need your hospital bed in heaven because your body's going to be so healthy. And so I was limited to what I could do work with her around the dying part because of what her mother had said. But So the father and I, we just kind of developed this relationship. You know, we talk about her meds and, you know, and so the day that I decided to write the book was the first time that him and I sat out on the porch and he just shared his life with me. And, you know, he let me be a social worker, and it just warmed my heart. And it was like an epiphany of, you know, and I've always known this in hospice anyway, but it was the real deal of, you know, we're not always here just for the patient. And in this particular case, I was definitely more there for him than I was for the little girl. Um, and the mother and I, her and I, so I do all the stuff with the father. And then the mother and I, we would just talk about angels and just talk about spiritual stuff, and we'd cry together. And she once sent me a card that said, "When you walk through the door, I see more than a nurse.
Oh,
I see a friend." And so we had this really close bond. So I was so thrilled when she came to my home. And just for them to even be able to get out 4 months after their daughter died, for them to be able to function, you know, they just adored that little girl. Of course, everybody adores their kids. But to just have that experience of the two of us looking up, it's like it's a big window to just look up and them to see their little girl in the center of a star. We both, the three of us just burst into tears, and the three of us were hugging each other, and it was just a beautiful moment.
That's fantastic.
And, you know, I can't believe I have never contacted them since. And even after I wrote my book, I really wanted to give them a copy of the book, but, you know, I've just never been good at locating people. And, you know, maybe after tonight I will. Reminiscing about that and wondering how they're doing. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to see me, as thrilled to see me as I am to see them. So, and that's the thing in hospice that I have to just say that, you know, people always say to me, "Oh my gosh, isn't that depressing? How can you do that kind of work?" And I just say, "Oh, it's just the most life enriching." Donna, thank you for mentioning that it's just the most sacred work that you can do, you know, dealing with people that are dying. You walk into their home and, you know, there's no time to have walls up, you know, there's no time left. So all the walls, protective walls, just come down, and you just meet people and you just deal with people on a soul level. It's just soul to soul. The whole personality and ego gets dropped away, and it's just such sacred time with people. And you build a relationship in minutes or hours that would take a lifetime in a different situation. So it's just incredibly sacred work.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think it's marvelous that you have embraced that and devoted so much of your life and energy for the people who are passing over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Greg first, and then Laurie. Greg?
Hi.
Hi, Greg.
Hey. So you mentioned the Holy Spirit. Maybe this is a Hive question. Even in organized religion, I don't get the Holy Spirit, like what that's about. What is the Holy Spirit?
Oh, that is a tough question. That's kind of like, yeah, what is God? Yeah. It's hard to have, you know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You know, I'm not really, because I've never spent that much time in organized religion. I'm not really, I don't know if I can come up with that. I'd have to meditate on that. But if I did meditate on it, I bet you I can come up with an answer. For me, the Holy Spirit, like, I feel the Holy Spirit. It's like, okay, spirit, you know, Christ came into a body. So he was matter. God is just like, you know, love, this expansion that you can't even describe. Everywhere, God, everywhere, love. The Holy Spirit is just kind of like, to me, that it's a spirit that it brings up in you, that it's like this sensation of like when I'm praising God in a church with people who are just, well, there was a church that I used to go to. It was called, it was here in Amherst, Hope Church. I don't know if anyone's ever been to that, but every time I'd walk away, I would just say, I feel the Holy Spirit, because, you know, we would sing and you just feel in a state of expansion. And yeah, I'm not doing a very good job. I have to meditate. That's a hard one. Is there anybody else on here that can help me out?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Thank you. Rescue to the rescue.
Hold on, Sandra. Laurie's first. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I had a question. When you said when you were meditating in Sedona, you saw the symbol of the X and the cross, and then you found the book. What does that symbol mean, and what did it mean to you?
Well, that's a wonderful question. Nobody has ever, even in the book, it doesn't really explain this symbol. I have since come up with my own explanation of what the symbol means. Is like the X is a symbol, the cross is the symbol of the cross, and the X is of Jesus, and the X is the symbol for Mary Magdalene. So that's kind of the only thing that I've ever been able to come up with of what this means. But yeah, it's interesting that I really stopped looking for what it actually meant. I was just so happy to find this book and find this symbol that I never kept looking to see what really does it mean. Does anybody know? If anybody else knows, it'd be great. To me, it's Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Like whenever I find, like I have a rock out front here that I call it my God rock. It's a cross. There's a cross in it. And then anytime I've seen a rock with an X on it, my sister's very much into Mary Magdalene, so I usually would give it to her. But I just always find it very, the two of us.
Thank you.
Okay, Sandra, you still have a question or a comment?
Oh, she's coming to my rescue.
Okay. All right.
Greg
So
was wondering who the Holy Spirit was, or what the Holy Spirit is, and my understanding of it is that it is my higher mind is the Holy Spirit. The part of me that aligns with the mind of God is the Holy Spirit.
Oh, that's beautiful. Does that help you?
Perhaps. Interesting thing, and I know I'm pulling religion, and I can tell you that I know much of religion in the Bible is man-made, so I take a lot of it with a grain of salt. But what's interesting is in the New Testament, Jesus actually talks about what's known as the unforgivable sin, and that is blaspheming the Holy Spirit. Like you can blaspheme God, you can blaspheme Jesus, but not the Holy Spirit. And it's interesting, that was in there.
Yeah, it is.
okay, thank you. Now,
Thank you,
James and then Donna. James?
Oh, we can't hear you. James.
There we go. I'm sorry, I couldn't get it to. I just want to say that Jesus says that when he is gone from the physical world, that they should look to the Holy Spirit. So in a way, the Holy Spirit is an it rather than a he or she. And it is something that if you add it to your own spirit, then that's the equivalent to having access to Jesus when he was in the body. So I think it's sort of pretty close to what the last comment was. Anyway.
But I like it. That sounds good. Yeah.
Thank you, James.
You
Donna?
both did better than I did.
Donna?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not into the Trinity at all, being Jewish, but my understanding of this of the Holy Spirit is kind of like the Spirit of God, which would be in Hebrew the Ruach Elohim, and it just seems to me that, like you said, sometimes when we meditate, and sometimes like what Sandra was saying, that you're in a place where your vibration is higher and their vibration, you come into a place of godliness. And so that it's when you feel, for me, it's when you feel that you're in the presence of something bigger than yourself,
Mhm.
and you draw inspiration from it.
Right.
It's the only way you can describe it is that you've been in the presence of God.
Mhm.
That's just my own something bigger than yourself, even if you don't believe in God per se.
Thank you, Donna. Sue Maisano, and then James again. Sue?
Hi, Cathy. Great talk. So you mentioned, okay. So you mentioned, when the near drawing experience is or you see the beautiful view. So that's it makes me think of the baptism. Why during the ceremony? First of all, I'm not religious, but why they use the water, immersing the water as the symbol of induction to the church. So I was reading a book about remote viewing, and the person, I think, had a near drawing experience where they have that experience. Okay. Oh yeah, they have a training to trigger a near-death experience where they dive into the water, submerge the guy under the water, push him under the water, not able to come up until he has a near-death experience. They can recognize when, right before losing him, they will pull him out and resuscitate. So to create that experience, so when you said the near drawing experience has the beautiful view, and so I feel that might be a safer way to create a near-death experience. But of course, I'm not recommending doing that. But it's just to make me make connections of those experiences. So
I'm curious. Does it say anywhere what that's like for these people? I mean, I'm just going to guess that it's scary and that it's not as pleasant.
Yes, and the guy mentioned he was chosen because he was in the army, and they're doing this experiment, and he was chosen to being submerged in the water, not allowed to come up until the borderline, crossing the line. So they will take him out and resuscitate, and he felt after a while he crossed kind of like a threshold. He started to feel peace, total peace, and no fear at all, and it's a beautiful place. So he was sharing about it, so that makes total sense why the near drawing experience have that tranquility. So thank you for sharing. Another thing is I want to ask Jack because Jack mentioned the beer bottle moving. Right, Jack, you remember that you mentioned that? So I was wondering, or the light flickering and things happening like that. For example, the beer bottle, you can establish a communication and say, okay, is this your spirit? If it is, you're trying to communicate with me. Show me a sign. Move the beer bottle to the right, or move the beer bottle in front of me, or move the beer bottle in front of that person to establish a line of communication. Because I think the other side is trying to communicate with us, but
Right.
we are so blindfolded because we cannot feel them when they have such an effort to trying to communicate through moving physical objects. And then you can ask them because they can hear you, they can perceive you and your thoughts. You can say, okay, do this to show me a yes.
Yeah.
And to see that, to get a confirmation, a sure sign of communication, because it's kind of one way of communication. They can know everything about you, but you have to use something, use a sign, use a movement to tell them to do something specific, so that
Yeah, they have to be proactive. Yeah.
so that you know as well. So it's just something I was thinking when Jack was sharing the story.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Well, when these events happen in my presence, I generally mentally express my thanks for them being there, etc. And and over the years, I picked up some clues, and I generally will look up towards the ceiling and to the left, which is where many of the NDEers experience their out of body. And, I have the satisfaction of feeling that I've made a connection and I've responded.
Mm.
And that's I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to make a quick comment about that you said it's helpful when there's more than one person to witness it. But most of the people that I know, it's like they don't need anybody to validate. They in their heart know when their loved one is connecting with them. So, and it really doesn't matter if anyone believes them or not, because if they feel it, then that's what's important. But it is nice to have it's nice to have more than one person see it, just to validate yourself.
Make a point about the validation, because I'm doing some research, and the near-death experience is a one-to-one. I mean, the person has the experience, and there are no witnesses.
That's right.
Here, there are occasions where you're getting this kind of a phenomenon taking place, and it's more than one, and that's all. I mean, I'm not, it isn't that I want to validate something.
Right, I get it.
Research point of view.
Yeah.
Which is
So
good.
James is next, and then Sandra, and then we have to end after that, because you said you have a meditation, a short meditation, Jack.
First of all, Cathy, thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. You certainly had no problem filling.
No problem filling it up. Thanks to Donna.
Okay, thank you.
James.
I wanted to just comment on Sue's comment, which is,
So Tina, do you want to take us through the meditation?
Jack, James had his hand up, and then one other person. Okay, before we start. Thank you.
very quickly, some of the entities that we're talking about are malevolent, and you can't tell which ones are real and which ones are not, except by their fruits. And Jesus was accused of being a malevolent entity and responded by the idea that you can know them by their fruits. But you have to be careful, because we're not equipped to identify who is what in that world. The other thing I wanted to say to Cathy is, I think the symbol on that book is a symbol from, or is used by the Eastern Orthodox Church. And if you take the vertical spoke and make it into a P, then it's a symbol for the Pope, standing for Peter.
Cool. Which church did you say you thought it was from?
Eastern Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Sandra, if you can make it quick, please.
Yes. I just wanted to address Donna. I'm also raised Jewish, and I love the idea of the Holy Spirit, because in Judaism I was taught that I was made in the image and likeness of God. And having the Holy Spirit for me has really helped me to access that energy, that power that is of God. When I'm, and the way that I access it is through following the laws of God. So just to help make that connection.
Right. And I agree. I think that that, you know, we all have our ways of connecting, and, you know, some through meditation, some through following the mitzvot, the commandments, and it's all good, whatever works for everybody, for them to feel themselves closer to God or divinity, whatever, however they want to describe that feeling. And it's just a power that is greater than all of us. Thank you, Sandra.
And within us. It's
Yes,
greater
thank you.
and it is us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cathy, before we start this short meditation, we just want to thank you very much for doing this for us. And as soon as Bethany and Sue do their the video and they set it up, it'll be on our website. Okay, so anybody that wants to can hear it, listen to it, and watch it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Jack?